Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined today by Pat Fitzmaurice and by Heath Cummings of CBS Sports Heath. Thank you so much for making the time to join us today.
Really happy to be here with you guys. It's the most wonderful time of the year, right? We're getting ready for fantasy drafts. None of our picks or calls are wrong yet. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, we're definitely not being too negative. We definitely weren't just before the show talking about how nice it is to have players you can drop early in the year as opposed to thinking about, hey, what if they hit? So we're talking about players from a positive angle today. I feel like I've done a lot of players who are likely to bust, players who are overvalued type of shows lately. Today, we are doing the opposite. We are doing top targets in every round. We're going to go 14 rounds deep. So we're going to hit a lot of different players today, but our top targets in each round of drafts, we're going to be going kind of based on the consensus rankings, which you can find at fantasypros.com/rankings. All of our 2025 consensus rankings and tiers are there, and you can find different scoring formats. We're kind of going with the half PPR, baseline view. So if your ADP is different on whatever site you're using, that's fine. But we're going based off the rankings, who our favorite players are in each round. Fitz, how are you feeling here mid-July, just a couple weeks away from August?
Feeling really good. Great to have Heath on the show, by the way. We had not ever done a show together for years and years, and all of a sudden we're doing two together in the span of like 5 or 6 weeks, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I'm feeling great. Like, we are right on the verge of, that crazy time when there are drafts every weekend and, people are asking you to grade their drafts and hitting you up with a million pre-draft questions. So just enjoying that lull before the storm.
It's a great couple week stretch where we're really excited. We're thinking about fantasy again. We're talking drafts. Scott Fishbowl drafts are going on, but it's not overwhelming quite yet. We're not in that late August, like, real surge yet. So it's a very fun few weeks here.
We haven't had our first depressing training camp injury yet either.
Yes.
So we're probably just days away from that. So enjoy it while it lasts.
Worst part of the summer for sure. Let's dive in. We're going to start with round 1. Like I said, go all the way through round 14. You guys have each picked a player that you guys like in this round. And obviously some of these earlier rounds, there's going to be a lot of players that we like, but you guys are giving us your top targets here. Heath, as the guest, we will start with you. Who is your player in round 1?
So yeah, looking at the consensus rankings, the guy that I thought, I like him more than consensus would be CeeDee Lamb. And it really has something to do with Lamb and the floor and upside that he's shown when Dak Prescott's been healthy. He's basically always been over 18.5 fantasy points per game when Dak's been healthy. He's shown us the 22-point upside when Dak's been healthy. And then the other part of it is, and you'll see this as we go through the next few rounds, when I look at consensus rankings or ADP right now, a lot of my favorite players in each round are running backs, which is an uncomfortable position to be in a format that really everybody wants to get those wide receivers. So it's really made me kind of push the wide receivers in round 1 up a little bit, more comfortable starting with one of them to give me the freedom to take as many running backs as I want in the next couple of rounds.
And I'm actually glad you mentioned, like, thinking about some of these future rounds. We are not, to clarify, building a team. And that's not what you're doing here, of course. This is just, you are kind of pushing them up because of the way you feel about guys later. But we are not building out a team. So if these guys say, like, a tight end is my favorite pick in the next 10 rounds, that they're not going to do that. But that would be okay, theoretically, because we're just going with our favorite targets here. So yeah, CeeDee Lamb, is he somebody, Heath, that you see as, I would assume you have Jamar Chase number 1 like everybody else, but is he wide receiver 2, like ahead of Justin Jefferson for you?
He is my wide receiver 2, and I've actually got him almost a full tier higher in terms of projections than I do Jefferson. He's my number 3 player overall. I'd go Chase, then Bijan, then CeeDee Lamb. But yeah, I just think the addition of George Pickens seems to have scared a few people about, well, maybe CeeDee won't see as many targets. And that's just not the type of guy that George Pickens has been. He is a very efficient wide receiver on a per target basis. He can make huge explosive plays, but he's not somebody who's going to demand 8 targets per game. I think he maybe opens up the underneath for Lamb just a little bit, makes the offense overall better, but doesn't necessarily impact Lamb's target share very much.
And Fitz, Lamb isn't your pick here in round 1, but it looks like you also have him as a top 3 player in your rankings on the site.
I do. In any league with a requirement to start 3 wide receivers, I feel the same as Heath. Lamb is my wide receiver 2, my number 3 overall. And I pretty much agree with Heath's take on Pickens. Like, I don't think it hurts at all.
So who is the player you're going with in round 1?
Oh, Worm, it's Bijan. And you and I did a short form video about my favorite early round picks a week or two ago. I believe I mentioned Ashton Jeanty as my favorite first rounder on that show, but I told you I chose Jeanty because you didn't have to pick early in the round to get him. But my real preference, as I think I mentioned to you then, would be Bijan. I generally like hero running back roster builds, and Bijan would be my first choice of heroes to put on the cape for me. 1,887 yards from scrimmage and 15 touchdowns last season, 58 catches his rookie year, 61 last year. Bijan hasn't missed a game in his first 2 seasons, and unless you count the infamous headache game in 2023 when Arthur Smith pulled him after 1 carry. But Bijan he passes every eye test. He's fast, powerful, has really good patience and vision. Falcons play at a fast pace, and they have a strong offensive line. There are just no holes in Bijan's profile.
Heath, do you see a case for Bijan as the number 1 pick in drafts, or do you think Chase is very clearly in that spot and Bijan is just number 2?
I think that you put Chase first because there's more separation for me between Chase and the wide receivers that you're going to find in round 2 than there is Bijan and the running backs that you're going to find in that range, or even in round 3. It's weird because I don't actually have Bijan as my number 1 running back in the projections. He is in the rankings because I think one of the things that Pat mentioned, he is probably the safest pick in fantasy. No injury history to be concerned with, skill set that we love, and an offense that we know is going to run through him. There's not that many workhorse running backs left in the NFL, especially workhorse running backs that are not old or injury prone. And he's all of those things.
Just quickly, Heath, actually, before we move on round 1, because Fitz mentioned Ashton Jeanty as a player he picked who was maybe more accessible to people. Like, you have to have an early pick to get Bijan. You can get Jeanty later. Do you like that as a back half of the first round target?
I absolutely love it. I almost chose Jeanty as my favorite pick in this round. I just didn't want to have 7 running backs to start the show. But yes, I think he is also one of those workhorse running backs who is young and is not an injury concern. I would not be really that surprised if Ashton Jeanty just goes out and scores more fantasy points than any other running back.
Let's go to round 2. Fitz, I'll start with you on this one. Who do you have for us?
Another Falcon, Drake London. Now, I wouldn't want to double up with 2 players from the same team in the first 2 rounds, but there's really no danger of that here. Bijan is going to be a top 3 pick in every draft, and London is probably not going to slip past the middle of round 2. London just fully arrived last year. 100 catches, 1,271 yards, and 9 touchdowns on a whopping 158 targets. Only Jamar Chase and Malik Neighbors saw more targets than London did last year. And what's nice is that London really clicked with Michael Penix Jr. when Penix took over as the starter late in the season. So in 3 Penix starts, London was targeted 39 times and had 22 catches for 352 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think London belongs on the same tier as Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, maybe even Puka Nacua. But London is typically drafted last among that group. I think he's just a fabulous second-round pick.
Heath, do you see London in that tier that Fitz just mentioned, or is he a little bit lower for you?
He's 1 tier lower for me, but I think that there's no doubt he has the upside to prove that he belongs in that tier. I've been a little bit more skeptical of the Michael Penix splits because they are such a small sample size, because it was against terrible defenses, and because Darnell Mooney missed one of those games.
Right.
But I believe in the talent. I'm not of London. I'm not quite as sure about the talent of the quarterback or how great the passing game is going to be. If Penix is good, then yes, London deserves to be in that range.
I'm excited to get to your player here for round 2, Heath, because I was looking at the CBS Sports collective rankings earlier today, and you guys are all much higher, especially you, on this player than we are in the expert consensus rankings on FantasyPros. So who do you have for us in round 2?
So I have this thing about my projections where, for the most part, unless we have a long injury history, I just project guys to play 17 games. And if I project DeVon Achane for 17 games, I project him to be the highest scoring running back in fantasy football this year. Now, there's an asterisk next to that, because you also maybe have to project his quarterback to play 17 games also. He averaged more than 23 PPR fantasy points per game when Tua was healthy last year. I project him to lead all running backs in catches, in targets, and in receiving yards. He had a massive role in the passing game last year, and that was with Jonnu Smith having a big role. They've replaced Jonnu Smith with Darren Waller, which whatever Darren Waller may have left, I don't think it's going to be those targets close to the line of scrimmage where they ask him to run with the football like a running back. I think we may even see Achane's target share go up a little bit from last year. He showed the ability last year to play 17 games. He's one of the most explosive running backs in all of football. And again, this is where the projections diverge from the rankings, because I do want to take Bijan ahead of him because Bijan's a much safer pick, and round one's the place where I really worry more about that. But I don't think there's any reason at all that Achane should fall to round 2. He's a surefire top 10 pick for me.
So he's obviously, you have to pick him in round 2 for the sake of our argument because of where he falls in ECR. Where would you take him? Is he, you said to top 10, do you have a specific spot?
I've taken him 5th in a couple of drafts recently.
Okay. 5th. Okay. Now, Fitz, you have long been a big Devon Achane fan as well. So I don't know if you're quite as, optimistic as Heath, but I assume you like the pick.
I do. Certainly a top 15, and I don't think first round is crazy at all. And, I wondered if there might be some pullback on the passing game usage. If the Dolphins try to reinstore the principle of verticality in their passing game, since it really disappeared and we saw Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle fall off last year. But like, any concerns about Achane's target drop off were sort of laid to rest by the Jonnu Smith trade. Like, now Achane is going to consolidate those short area targets and have a massive share of those for the Dolphins. And I'm not worried that he might not be the goal line back. Fine, give Ollie Gordon the goal line carries, but who's going to be in there when the Dolphins are at the 4 or 5 yard line or the 3 yard? It's probably still going to be Achane, and he can absolutely score from there. So not worried about that. I think what we see from Achane this year could look a lot like early career Alvin Kamara, where maybe he doesn't get to 1,000 rushing yards, but has like 80 receptions, 600 receiving yards, and collectively double-digit touchdowns.
This might be a weird thing to say, considering a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who just missed, most of last season, is inside the top 2 rounds. But is Achane the riskiest guy in the top 2 rounds because it's not just him staying healthy? It is, like Heath just alluded to, his quarterback needing to stay healthy as well. Does that added risk play into your ranking of him, Fitz?
Those guys the backups were so bad last year. And now, Zach Wilson, the much maligned Zach Wilson. Yeah, also bad. Like, I'm not going to try to spin him up into a, something better than he is. But I do think it would be non-disastrous if Zach Wilson had to play some games.
Okay. That's the first time that sentence has ever been said. Let's go to round 3. Heath, you've got a running back here, and I will tell you, this is also the player that Fitz would have picked if you didn't pick him already.
Yeah, Chase Brown. I'll be honest. I went into this offseason like a lot of people have with DeAndre Swift, just thinking, well, they're going to add somebody else that makes me feel worse about him. I couldn't believe. I didn't think coming into the league that Chase Brown was the type of running back that teams would give an 80% snap share week after week after week and give him 20 touches a game, basically. That's what the Bengals did in the second half of last year. And they didn't add anybody this offseason that scares me even a little bit. This will be one of the best offenses, and this is a true workhorse running back in that offense. And so I think you get that in round 3, you feel like you just received a gift.
Yeah, and Fitz, you can share your other player, but obviously you also wanted to pick Chase Brown here, so a strong agreement on this player.
Yeah, totally agree with Heath. And maybe Chase Brown is not getting 90% snap shares anymore. Maybe someone from among Zach Moss, Samaje Perine, and my personal favorite, Taj Brooks, steps in to steal a few of the carries, but like, Chase Brown is still going to be a workhorse. And you just have to love that the Bengals offense is so consolidated. And, it's this potent offense that really only goes through 3 guys plus the quarterback.
Yeah, I didn't sit down and put together a list like this, but I can't imagine the list is very long of running backs who are very clear workhorse number 1 backs in what is very clearly expected to be a top 5 scoring offense, in, top 10 to make the longer list. Like, I that list cannot be very long, and to get a guy like that in round 3 is really exciting. So like, agreement across the board, I guess. There's not really much I can add to that one. But Fitz, you actually went with one of his teammates in round 3 to go in a different direction here.
I did. And like Chase Brown, who is a second rounder, who we've got as a third rounder in ECR, I think T. Higgins should probably be going late in the second round too. Getting him in the third is a really good value. I think this Bengals passing game is going to cook this year because it's really good. Joe Burrow is one of the best pure passers in the game, and because the Cincinnati defense is likely to be really bad. So the Bengals are going to have to put up a lot of points to win games. There are three good ways to tap into this passing game. You could draft Jamar Chase, but that requires you to have the 101 or maybe the 102. You could draft Burrow, but he's kind of expensive for a quarterback who doesn't run much. Or you can draft T. Higgins in the third. And I know some people don't like drafting a guy who isn't the top receiver on his own team, but I think Higgins will outperform a lot of teams' number one receivers. He scored 10 touchdowns in 12 games last year and was pacing for almost 1,300 yards. He missed 5 games last year, also missed 5 games in 2023, but the perception of injury risk is why Higgins is there in the third round and not the second. He's really good. He's averaged 9 yards per target for his career, almost 2 yards per route run. He's just a fabulous receiver paired with one of the top 2 pure passers in the game. The lowest yardage total for Joe Burrow in any of his full seasons was 4,475 yards, and the fewest passing touchdowns for Burrow in any of his full seasons, 34. And what if, I know Higgins is considered the injury risk, but what if Chase were to miss any time? Over the last 3 years, Chase has missed 5 games. In those 5 games, Higgins has averaged 102.2 yards and 20 PPR points per game.
Heath, do you see this as, assuming health, limiting the upside of your team if you're taking a guy who's not the number one target in his offense as early as round 3? Or are you with Fitz, like the offense is just so good it won't matter?
No, I think he inherently has upside at his cost because we are all factoring in not just the 10 missed games over the last 2 years, but the fact that he's had a lot of partial games too. A lot of games he's left early that have kind of really held down his per game stats, not just his overall stats. And so with that being factored in, there's the upside that T. Higgins just plays 17 games. And right there, you're getting a better player than what you drafted. And I think that people do focus a little too much on the time he's missed and not enough on the contingent upside that Fitz talked about, that if Jamar Chase misses time, T. Higgins might be the number one wide receiver in fantasy.
Winning your fantasy league starts before draft day, and the Fantasy Pros Draft Kit gives you the knowledge to do it right. Get insight on proven strategies, must-haves, players to avoid, and more from analysts like Pat Fitzmaurice, Derek Brown, and Andrew Erickson. Don't walk into draft day guessing. Read up, lock in, win your league. Go to fantasypros.com/kit. All right, guys, let's head to round 4. Fitz, I'll have you go first here, but I will mention that you also, for the second consecutive round, wanted to pick the player that Heath will take.
Yeah, Heath stole him from me. Heath is just being a rude guest. Came into the house, tracked mud on the carpeting. No, but that's okay. Heath is a great guy, so we'll forgive him. But yeah, so it's Alvin Kamara for me. And I love him as a 4th rounder. He is only going that late because people are worried that the Saints offense is going to be a dumpster fire. And it most likely will be a dumpster fire. But with Kamara, I would encourage people to warm their hands by the Flames. He was RB5 in PPR points per game last year, and the Saints were not exactly an offensive juggernaut last year either. Kamara always catches a ton of passes, and that is probably going to be the case again, since neither Tyler Shuck nor Spencer Rattler are these guys are going to be eager to check down if they don't see anything they like downfield a few seconds after the snap and the pass rush starts to close in on them. So I think there's going to be a lot of designed dump offs to Kamara. I think he's a value in the 4th round because what he can give you as a pass catcher in addition to his 800 or 900 rushing yards.
Heath, is this the right area for Kamara?
Yeah, 100%. I don't like him near as much as the guy I picked, but no, I think there's so many reasons to just avoid the Saints, but if you're going to draft one, this is the guy to do it with because he is the security blanket for quarterbacks that are very, very much going to need security blankets. I don't know that we get as much out of him as a rusher as we have in the past, but this team's going to be playing from behind so often that Kamara is going to have to be involved in the passing game.
Who do you have here that you stole from Fitz?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ken Walker, and this one is also, I guess, a little bit polarizing because I actually think he should be taken mid round 3. And sometimes you see him fall all the way to round 5. He's had some injury concerns. He had some real efficiency problems, but I think Kubiak fixes the rushing efficiency of this offense. And they've made it very clear that they want to run the ball a lot more than they did in 2024. So I think it's a run heavy system where Walker's the clear lead running back, sharing passing downs, and a little bit with Zach Charbonnet, but he's definitely the 1A. And the explosive ability he's shown in combination with the receiving upside that he showed last year, I think really gives him top 12 upside without a doubt.
This is one that his ranking in ECR, I think, is even dragged down a little bit by folks that are not here at FantasyPros. Because I know like Derek Brown is very big on Kenneth Walker. Fitz obviously wanted to pick him too. Like as a team, I think we are collectively like pretty high on him also. Fitz, do you want to weigh in on why he would have been your pick too?
Yeah. So, in addition to everything Heath mentioned, there is the Kubiak Dennison combination coaching with Clint Kubiak being the OC and Rick Dennison being, I think, the run game coordinator. That combination, well, at least Kubiak family, because going back to Denver, it was Clint's dad, Gary, as the Broncos offensive coordinator under Mike Shanahan, and Rick Dennison was either the O-line coach or the run game coordinator. And like that was the Terrell Davis, Clinton Portis era, and they were always churning out big yardage. But after those guys, it was dudes like Reuben Drones and Tatum Bell and Mike Anderson having these one-off great fantasy seasons. And it was because of that run game scheme. Like it was just gold no matter who was in the backfield. And, not only that, but Kenneth Walker didn't do much as a pass catcher his first couple of years. And then we saw a big spike in his passing game usage last year, which is encouraging.
Let's go to round 5 here. Heath, who do you have for us?
This is the guy that I talk about on every podcast that I do. It seems like it's DeAndre Swift, who has really gotten a bad rap in the fantasy community. Mostly, I would say, because our expectations have been so sky high 2 or 3 times for him, and he fails to live up to those. But what he has done is be a top 24 running back on a per game basis every single year of his career. He's shown us that borderline top 12 upside. People talk about how Ben Johnson doesn't like DeAndre Swift. But the best season of DeAndre Swift's career came when he was on the same team that Ben Johnson was coaching. He was when Jamal Williams was scoring all those touchdowns. DeAndre Swift was finishing as a top 16 running back in PPR on a per game basis. Another team that everyone expected to bring somebody else in. It was going to be Nick Chubb, or it was going to be J.K. Dobbins, or it was going to be Amari Hampton, and it was nobody. I think Ben Johnson's pretty comfortable with DeAndre Swift as one of his 2 running backs. Roschon Johnson's a great value also. But what it feels like when you look at where he's being drafted, usually just outside of the top 24 running backs, we are drafting DeAndre Swift at the floor that he's shown us over and over and over again. And now you get a chance to also have the upside of what we thought he could be earlier in his career. I expect a big role in the passing game, and I expect this Bears offensive line and offensive philosophy to be greatly improved from last year when he was still a low-end RB2.
Yeah, just looking at his finishes, 5 years, RB19, RB23, RB22, RB19, RB18, that's in half PPR scoring is just like you always talk about like you learn in science class growing up the difference between accurate and precise. He is precise. He is in the same area every time, every single season. Fitz, you are roughly in line with ECR on Swift. Ironically, Erickson and Debro, who aren't on the show today, are both way lower on Swift. So I'd be curious to get their opinion why they disagree. You're more along the lines with Heath here, though.
Yeah, I have moved him around pretty restlessly. I would say I've moved him around probably more in my offseason rankings than just about anyone else. I'm kind of conflicted on him. Like if you go to NFL Next Gen Stats, they have this stat for running backs: rushing yards over expected and rushing yards over expected per carry. DeAndre Swift ranked dead last in that category last year. I think he was like minus 0.69 rushing yards over expected per carry. So he was pretty far underwater. But like, how much does that factor in what a disaster the Bears offensive line was last year? And they have completely overhauled the middle of that line in the most impressive way possible, bringing in like 3 studs to man the middle of the offensive line. So that's going to help. Ben Johnson is going to help. And then it's behind him, Roschon, who I'll might talk about a little later, and Kyle Monangai, a 7th round pick. So yeah, I mean, there is plausible upside for DeAndre Swift, no question.
What direction Fitz did you go in for round 5?
I went with DeVonta Smith, and I'll be honest, I did not love any of the 5th round options. But DeVonta Smith is one of the best route runners in the game. He's dangerous after the catch. Um, DeVonta would have had his 3rd straight 1,000-yard season last year if he had missed 4 games. He scores touchdowns. He has averaged 9.1 yards per target and 1.92 yards per route run for his career. Those are outstanding numbers. And, again, people are often reluctant to draft a player who's the number 2 target on his own team. And, DeVonta Smith does have to share targets with A.J. Brown. But Smith was wide receiver 17 in PPR fantasy points per game last season, even though the Eagles were the run heaviest team in the league. So Smith offers this sturdy floor, and we could get a high ceiling season from him if the Eagles are forced to throw a little more this year.
Heath, with a guy like Smith, kind of the same thing as Higgins, right? In a different sense, but you're taking a guy who's not the number 1 target on his offense. Do you like him in round 5?
I'm just a little bit lower on this. I don't like it though, because I think that everything that Fitz said about Smith is accurate. I think he is an exceptionally talented player. The problem is he plays in one of T. Higgins is the second option in one of the best pass offenses in the NFL. DeVonta Smith's the best, and that's why he's going 3 rounds later. I think the great thing about Smith, and the reason that I rank him higher than his projection, is that he has been so good if either A.J. Brown or Dallas Goedert is out. When both of those guys are healthy, he's been a little bit of a bust at cost most of the time, more of a wide receiver 3 than a wide receiver 2. We saw Goddard miss extensive time last year. Brown missed a little time last year. And so DeVonta Smith finishes as a top 20 wide receiver. It's good to have that type of contingent upside. I'd rather wait just a little bit longer. But the thing I like about drafting him is I know he's very good. And who knows, maybe the Eagles throw just a little bit more this year.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what the offense looks like in general. The Super Bowl champion every year, you see the brain drain, you see, talented players go elsewhere. It's still a really, really good team, but I'll be curious if maybe they are forced to throw just a little bit more than they did last year too, even if it's not their plan going in. Let's go to round 6 here. Fitz, I'll start with you on this one.
Calvin Ridley. I think he can give you wide receiver 2 numbers at a wide receiver 3 price. Like, he's just such an easy click for me in the 6th round. Ridley has given us 2 straight 1,000-yard seasons after missing the 2022 season because of that gambling suspension. He got to 1,000 yards last season with Will Levis and Mason Rudolph as his quarterbacks. Now he gets to play with number 1 overall draft pick Cam Ward. And I know Ward is going to struggle at times. Most rookie quarterbacks do, but he's an aggressive downfield thrower, and he's more accurate than either Levis or Rudolph. There's also very little target competition for Ridley. I think there's a great chance Ridley sees significantly more than the 120 targets he saw last year.
Heath, Calvin Ridley is 69th overall, wide receiver 32 in half PPR. Is that too high, too low, or just right?
That's pretty much just right for me. I don't necessarily, I think there's upside with where you're taking him, and there's risk. And it really just comes down to, can this Titans offense with a rookie quarterback look a little bit more competent? And if it does, then I think Ridley probably pays off just a little bit at value. He's one of those guys that I don't have a lot of takes on. I think he's a round 6 pick. He's a number 3 wide receiver who has huge upside on a given week.
You have got one of the rookie running backs here in round 6, Heath, and this is kind of the range for a couple of these guys, and I think it's really interesting. I know you've been really high on this player, since the draft, so I was kind of expecting you to pick him if you're going to go in a rookie running back direction, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on why you're going with the guy you did.
Yeah, TreVeyon Henderson was my second favorite running back in this class before the draft, and I'm pretty much still there. I didn't like the fact that he didn't get drafted quite as high as I would like, but I think the situation actually works out really well for him. First off, we know what Josh McDaniels' history is with pass catching running backs, and TreVeyon Henderson profiles as somebody who could be very, very good at that. And so he doesn't necessarily even have to win a large share of the rushing down work to pay off in round 6, but I think he has a chance to, partially because of Ramondre Stevenson's struggles. And the one thing that can keep the 2 things that can keep veterans on the field over rookies who are more exciting are when you have veterans that are really good in pass protection or really good at ball protection. And Ramondre Stevenson is bad at both of those things. I think Henderson might be a better pass catcher the first day of training, or a better, not pass catcher, pass blocker the first day of training camp. than the Stevenson is. So I think there's a real opportunity for him to begin the year in that third down role with some explosive playmaking in the running game. And then as the season goes on, he becomes the number one guy for hopefully an improving Patriots offense.
And I believe this is what you just said, but I just want to clarify for the listeners. This isn't that you see him like, oh, round 6 Henderson is a better value than round 5 RJ Harvey. You actually have Henderson ranked ahead of guys like Harvey and Hampton, right? Yeah. Fitz, how do you feel about that ranking of the rookies?
Yeah, I mean, I think Heath is smart to focus on what Henderson can give you as a pass catcher, and then what he gives you as a runner is gravy, but it could be a lot of gravy. Like it could be a double ladle of gravy because Stevenson had the fumbling problems, man. I mean, like they sat him on the bench for Antonio Gibson last year. But like Henderson is going to own those passing downs because he's electric on screens. And because, I mean, you would think a guy like Henderson, who's not a big prospect like Omarion Hampton, but he is a dog as a pass blocker. Like he's really good at it. That dude's not coming off the field on passing downs.
The thing I really like about Henderson as opposed to somebody like Hampton is, we have concerns about how much work is Hampton going to get early in the season with Najee Harris there. If Henderson doesn't get a lot of the work, he's still getting really valuable work, catching passes, getting explosive plays, like maybe not the short term, like touchdowns, but everything else, the most valuable stuff you can be doing as a running back right off the bat. I think Henderson is going to be doing that for what I expect to be a better offense in Drake Maye's second year. So yeah, I think it's a great pick, and he's not somebody that needs to be a workhorse for it to pay off, kind of like a poor man's Jahmyr Gibbs in that sense, where he's just going to be doing stuff that we like to see in fantasy. So I think it's a great call. And, I think it's smart to plant your flag on him compared to some of the other guys going in this range. I want to let everybody know about DraftKings. Get in the game. Best ball is live at DraftKings. $15 million is on the line with real stakes and real excitement. Best ball is the biggest fantasy contest at DraftKings. We're taking a $15 million guaranteed prize pool with 2 millionaires being crowned for first and second place. Play season-long fantasy football the DraftKings way. With Best Ball, there's no waiver wires and no roster management. You get bigger rosters, so injuries won't end your season. Just draft your team and you're set. If a shot at winning a share of $15 million isn't enough to get you excited, check this out. DraftKings is offering everyone a draft one, get one special. Your $20 entry scores you a bonus ticket. Download the DraftKings app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for all customers who enter the NFL Best Ball 15 Million Millionaire Contest to get a bonus ticket and get a shot at being crowned one of 2 millionaires only on DraftKings. All right, let's head to round 7. Heath, who do you have for us?
This is kind of one of my guys this year in terms of value. It's Jerry Jeudy. And I think if Joe Flacco wins the starting job, this is way, way, way too low. And if anybody else wins it, this is probably just about right. I'm a little hesitant to buy mid-career breakouts, especially as like year 5, year 6, and then believe that's going to continue. But he was only 25 years old last year. I think people don't realize how young Jerry Jeudy is. He'd shown us flashes in the past, took off last year with Jameis Winston, and Joe Flacco at this stage of his career is basically older Jameis Winston. We've seen him elevate pass catchers like he did with Josh Downs last year, like he did with teammate David Njoku a year before. And I really believe that Jeudy, who was a top 5 wide receiver in the second half of last year, has top 15 upside for as long as he's playing with Joe Flacco.
It's funny, Fitz, I'm realizing that you were the wrong person to have on the show because once again, I'm looking like Erickson is lower than consensus, Debro is lower than consensus. You are above consensus, so I'm assuming you're going to agree with Heath here.
Yeah, I'm just here to be the Greek chorus for Heath today.
I like it. I could use this more often.
So yeah, the funny thing is Jeudy averaged 3 catches and 38 yards last year in the 7 games that Deshaun Watson started. Like he did not work well with Watson. Obviously just smashed in the Jameis Winston games and even was really productive in the Dorian Thompson Robinson and Bailey Zappi games. So did not click with Deshaun Watson, but everything else was just gold. Like he said, he's still young. And if you draft Jeudy, you're just praying that Joe Flacco makes a bunch of starts.
Fitz, we've talked about some of the younger guys available in previous rounds. You have, I think, probably the oldest player we're talking about today as your choice here.
Yeah, and this is probably going to be controversial. It's Travis Kelce, and it's funny that it's controversial because we've been debating for so long whether he should be a first-round pick in fantasy. Now you can get him in the 7th round, and I feel like the only way he doesn't pay off on this price is if he gets hurt and Travis Kelce has not missed more than 2 games in any season since its rookie year. And a lot of the games he's missed have been regular season finales when the Chiefs had a bye week wrapped up already. Or if he just collapses, I suppose the collapse is possible. He's 36. Last year was the first time he averaged under 10 yards per catch, but he still had 97 catches last year. Like, do we really think Travis Kelce isn't going to be a big part of this offense again? That Patrick Mahomes isn't going to look for him? Like, come on, I'm not buying that. So 7th round, yeah, I'll take it.
Heath, let's loop in your round 8 pick, who's David Njoku, because it's the first tight end that you've brought up on the show. How do you compare a guy like Njoku in the 8th to Kelce in the 7th?
I have them both, I think, back to back in my rankings. I love Fitz's call here. I think one of the things he didn't talk about was the fact that Kelce outscored Sam Laporta and Mark Andrews per game last year, despite the fact that he only scored 3 touchdowns, and those guys lived on touchdowns. And we know touchdowns are not the stickiest stat. We've seen big touchdown seasons from Kelce in the pack. I would be more likely to believe he was going to ride off into the sunset if it wasn't for how hard he's been working this offseason to get in shape and how all the things Patrick Mahomes is saying about how much better he looks. I think Kelce wants to have one more great season. So great call there. Njoku, it's a lot of the stuff I said about Jerry Jeudy. The difference is that he's actually safer because their layups in that Browns offense in the Kevin Stefanski system. I know they got a new offensive coordinator. I still think Stefanski has a big impact on things. The layups go to the tight ends. Njoku had a 5-yard ADOT over the last 2 years. If they play one of the younger guys, kind of like the Alvin Kamara is the guy that they dump it off to in New Orleans, and Njoku is the guy they dump it off to in Cleveland. So I think he's a little bit safer in terms of if Joe Flacco is not the starter, but it's worth remembering that in 2023, he played 5 games with Joe Flacco and averaged 18 fantasy points per game in those 5 games. So big time upside for as long as Flacco is starting. And I think he might be better than an 8th round value, even with one of the other guys.
Flacco has always loved his tight ends from day one. What is your approach generally, Heath, on the tight end position? Is it to, I know you didn't mention these guys earlier, but is it to try and get a Bowers or a McBride or a Kittle early, or is it more to get, this mid-tier, or do you just want to kind of punt and wait till even later to get your tight end?
Yeah, I wish almost that Achane had been 12th in the rankings, so I could have said him for round 1, and I could have said one of the tight ends for round 2, because my plan so far this year has pretty much been take Bowers or McBride in round 2. If I miss both those guys, it's take Kelce or Njoku in round 7. So yeah, these are the 4 guys that I usually end up with.
Am I misremembering? Did I see you took Bowers first overall in Scott Fishbowl?
I took him first overall in Scott Fishbowl. I've heard some of the arguments about why he won't be as good as he was last year. I just can't believe in a better offense with a better quarterback and no significant target competition added that he's going to be worse. I think Brock Bowers might be worth a 1st round pick in just a standard PPR league.
I've got the 3rd pick in my draft this weekend, so maybe if he's there, I'll go with it.
I took him at 104. And I saw
Okay.
a lot of people getting them at like 109, 111. I'm like, did I reach? But so Heath is making me feel better about that. But yeah, I like Bowers at 104. Scott Fish always pumps up the tight ends in his league.
Yeah, for sure. Fitz, we have not done your round 8 player yet. Who do you have for us?
Yeah, it's Brock Purdy. So in his 2 full seasons as an NFL starter, Purdy has finished QB7 and QB10 among quarterbacks who made at least 6 starts. His ADP is QB 13. Purdy is averaging 8.9 yards per attempt for his career. And just to put that number into perspective, the single best one season YPA that Tom Brady ever had in his career was 8.6 yards per attempt in 2011. So Purdy averaging 8.9 yards per attempt over 40 careers game shows that 1, he's good, and 2, Kyle Shanahan's system is good. So, I mean, Purdy even gave us some rushing value last year, 323 yards, 5 touchdown runs. Maybe the rushing numbers dry up a bit, but Purdy could be due for some positive regression in touchdown rate. Only 4.4% of his throws resulted in TDs last year. That's below his career mark of 6%.
Yeah, Heath, I'm curious where you have Purdy ranked amongst quarterbacks, but also because you didn't pick a quarterback for this, kind of the same thing about tight ends. What's your approach with the position?
So the last 3 drafts that I've done, I've drafted Brock Purdy. So all I can do is just 100% agree. I think he's going to smash his career high in pass attempts. I think people have focused on the weapons that he's lost, but I think this 49ers defense may not be near as good as it's been during the time that he's been there. So I expect he's my QB7. Absolutely love it. The reason I didn't put him here is because I've been spoiled by all these analyst drafts where I get Brock Purdy in round 10 or round 11. But he is my QB7, and I absolutely, amongst the quarterbacks, I think he is probably the guy that I am highest on amongst all quarterbacks.
Let's stick with you, Fitz, for your pick in round 9, because you're going back to the quarterback well here again.
I am. So I have to admit that Purdy is not my favorite click at quarterback in drafts this year. It's Drake Maye, and you know this, Worm. I mean, after doing shows with you all offseason, you could probably recite my Drake Maye sales pitch for me. And I've been giving it to our viewers and listeners. They've been getting the hard sell on Drake Maye offseason. So I will spare all of you a long breakdown of why I think Drake Maye is going to run for 800 yards and at least 4 or 5 touchdowns this year, and why I think he'll put up solid passing numbers. I'll just say that if anyone out there believes in Drake Maye and wants to get him this year, use Justin Fields as your alarm clock. Like when Fields gets picked, take Drake Maye in the next round. And Fields' ADP is 93 overall. Maye is 115 overall. So you'll probably be picking Maye a full round ahead of his ADP, but you will be assured of getting him. And I think it's well worth it to get him this year.
Heath, again, we just talked about how Purdy is such a great target for you. Is Maye kind of also in that conversation in this round of drafts?
No, my Drake Maye ranking was so low that we have our St. Jude draftathon coming up and just starting actually. And we had somebody make a donation if we would do a weekly segment about how wrong I was about Drake Maye because he's just convinced I'm going to be eating crow all season long. So we appreciate the donation and we're going to do the segment and hopefully I'll look dumb. I'm probably still more of a Stephon Diggs skeptic in terms of his health and his age. And I think if Diggs is not good, this is still the worst receiving core in the NFL. And so that's what worries me. I loved what Maye did as a rusher last year, but also there's some efficiency there that's just probably not repeatable. He had some very long runs, and he'll have a couple of those, but I think we see the yards per attempt come down a little bit. I'm hopeful that the rush attempts go up, but in the Josh McDaniels get it out quick system, I'm a little bit more worried they're going to train him to not take off and run, but dump it off to TreVeyon Henderson instead. And so we'll see if I'm wrong. I like the player. I like him a lot more in Dynasty than I do in redraft. And if Stephon Diggs is somehow at 31 coming off of an ACL, Stephon Diggs again, then I'm going to have egg on my face.
So who are you going with in round 9 then?
In round 9, I'm going to go with Ricky Pearsall, and this feels like cheating because from the moment the Jauan Jennings trade request or contract request happened, it seemed like a switch flipped and everybody started taking Pearsall a couple of rounds ahead of Jauan Jennings. I like both of them. I'm happy to take whichever one goes second. I think in the consensus rankings, Pearsall was showing as the second one, so I chose him. There's big time upside for Ricky Pearsall, and he showed it in the last 2 games of last year. The reason we can't rank him any higher is because it was 2 games. And I don't expect much from Brandon Ayuk until probably week 7, week 8. Gives him a great runway to establish himself as the number 1 receiver in this offense. Either way, I think if I can get at the 8-9 turn, both Jennings and Pearsall, I feel great about that.
Fitz, what do you think about Pearsall?
Like him a lot. It's funny because people on a bunch of fantasy analysts on Twitter this week were sort of fighting the Jauan Jennings crusades, people on either side of that battle. And I have tended to be, I did not join in with my sword and shield, but I have been on the Ricky Pearsall side of things. I feel better about Pearsall. I mean, I never trust age 27 breakouts. And if you look, like Jauan Jennings' yards per route run last year was fabulous. It was like 2.26. But like for the rest of his career, which I think amounts to more route runs than he had last year, routes run, it was like 1.4. Like it just wasn't good. So I'm not sure I trust the breakout for Jennings. I trust more in the draft pedigree and athleticism. And, Pearsall gave us a pretty good audition the last 2 weeks of 2024.
Sorry, Heath, did you say where you would take him? Because you said round 9 is almost like cheating at this point. Where is the round that you would be wanting to reach for him?
Well, what I'd like to do is take one of them in round 8 and one of them at the start of round 9.
Okay.
Like I'd feel pretty good about that. I've considered it in round 7, but I think round 8 is probably the sweet spot.
Let's go to round 10 here. Heath, we'll start with you. Who do you have?
Well, we're not going with the youth this time. We're going with the old man, and it's Cooper Kupp. And I do have, like, I've been taunted by our listeners over this. I have kind of a theory that if a guy shows you that in his 30s that he's done, believe him. The problem is kind of like I can't quite believe the last 2 games for Ricky Pearsall. It was only really the last 4 games for Cooper Kupp. Through week 14, he was on a 1,200-yard, 10-touchdown pace. And then those last 4 games, he just disappeared. I'm hopeful that was some sort of injury. And he's Cooper Kupp again at the beginning of this year, which is probably a big-time problem for JSN. I love the fact they're talking about playing him predominantly in the slot. He's just been elite too recently for me to see him fall this late in drafts. I would actually prefer Kupp to the 49ers, and I'd take him as early as round 7.
Fitz, what do you think?
I don't know if I've taken him in any draft yet. I mean, I'm not one of these people who's done 200 best ball drafts already, but yeah, I don't know if he, like he said, like the switch just flipped off very abruptly. I don't know if he turned to dust or if there was some sort of hidden explanation, an injury or something else. I'd like to believe that he goes back to his home state and has like one more really nice season. I don't know. I'm very sort of torn on him and have erred on the side of not drafting him.
Fitz, who's your round 10 pick?
It's Jordan Mason. And I actually think both of the Minnesota Viking running backs are pretty attractive. Aaron Jones might even be the better value at this point because Mason is starting to get expensive. I'm just not sure if people can actually get Jordan Mason in the 10th round. So please don't yell at me in the YouTube comments about Mason not being available here. But if you can, and that's where ECR has him, like Mason should have some standalone value this year. And if anything happens to Aaron Jones, who's 30 now, by the way, Mason will be a guy that we will be ranking in the top 10 or even in our top 5 at running back every week that Jones is out. So Mason showed us what he could do last year when Christian McCaffrey was hurt early in the year. Mason averaged 120 scrimmage yards a game and 5.1 yards per carry before getting hurt himself. And the Vikings run game's real heavy on the outside zone, which is just totally suits Mason's abilities. I think if you can get Mason in the 10th round, you should pounce on him.
Heath, is Mason a target for you as sort of like a handcuff plus type of player?
Yeah, I think he's got flex appeal even with Aaron Jones healthy. I would not be surprised if he just has more rush attempts than Aaron Jones this year. And I certainly wouldn't be surprised with Jones fumbling issues if he has more rush attempts inside the 5 or 10 yard line and maybe even more rushing touchdowns. I hope that this high flying Vikings pass game can still be that with a first year starter at quarterback. I do think there's a chance that with a first-year starter at quarterback, they go a little more run-heavy than they have in the past. And there's room for Aaron Jones to touch the ball 15 times a game and Jordan Mason to still be a contributor in fantasy. So I think if you can find him in round 10, that's great.
Fitz, who is your round 11 guy?
Keon Coleman. So we saw glimpses of Keon's big playability in year 1. He averaged 19.2 yards per catch, just under 10 yards per target. He just needs to get more consistent and earn more targets. But the Bills don't really have anything close to an alpha receiver on their roster. There's substantial target upside for Coleman. I'm hoping for a big step forward in year 2.
I wonder if it's, especially since we do the Dynasty show together, if I've heard you talk more about Drake Maye or Keon Coleman over the last year. Because
it's got to be Maye, but there's been a lot of Coleman hype too.
Heath, are you buying into any of Fitz's Keon Coleman hype?
I hate the Bills offense so much. And then Josh Allen's awesome. They are very good, but just their offensive philosophy of even our best skill position player, James Cook, let's just give him 230 touches or something and mix in Ty Johnson and Ray Davis and let's throw it to 7 different pass catchers. I think that the Keon Coleman breakout path is like a James Jones season where he doesn't actually have 1,000 yards and he doesn't catch that many passes, but he scores 10 touchdowns because he plays with one of the best quarterbacks on the planet. And so if you can get that in round 11, I think it's not the guy that I generally click on that range, but he is certainly has that potential upside because of who he plays with.
Who is the guy that you click on here?
So my round 11 guy was Tank Bigsby, and I want to apologize in advance to all the Bashal Tootin touts. I know everybody loves him. I looked at ADP earlier this week, and there's some site where he's going earlier than both Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby already. Tank Bigsby has had a terrible time catching the football and pass protecting. He's not a passing downs guy, but he was one of the most efficient rushers in the NFL last year. And I think that there is a chance everybody looks at Tootin and says, well, he's the Bucky Irving. And I think there's a chance that Tank Bigsby is the Bucky Irving. And I would much rather take a chance on him if he's going third in this group in round 11 than drafting one of the other guys in round 7, 8, or 9. I don't think we really know anything about the Jacksonville backfield heading into training camp, but the narrative that the day 3 running back is going to be the guy because he's the one the coach chose doesn't hold as much weight with me as it seems to be with a lot of people.
Fitz, what's your approach with this backfield?
Yeah, I mean, kind of lean into it. I want to get a piece of it in every draft just because the ambiguity is keeping the prices low. And if you don't get the right guy, it's really easy to cut ties and just waive them after a while. But the potential rewards if you hit on the right guy, and maybe Bigsby, well, as he said, he's not going to play on passing downs. I'm kind of just scratching him off my board in full point PPR leagues. And half point, that's different. He was so much better as a runner than ETN was last year. It wasn't even funny. Like as all the metrics, yards after contact per carry, rushing yards over expected, ETN just got blown away by Tank Bigsby. So I see why Heath is attracted here, and like Bashal Tootin is a fumbling issue. LaQuint Allen isn't really an early down guy, so it wouldn't surprise me if Tank got the vast majority of the first and second down work.
Round 12, we've got one rookie and one guy in his 30s, so opposite end of the spectrum here. Heath, let's start with the rookie.
Yeah, I'll go with Matthew Golden. Again, another guy I would take 3 or 4 rounds earlier than what the ECR shows right now. It seems like some people really hate Matthew Golden. I know the downside is that so far Green Bay hasn't had a number 1 wide receiver. They just spread the ball around too much. But the other thing they haven't had is a first round pick as a wide receiver. It's something the Packers didn't do for basically 2 decades. And they did it this year. I think that's because they looked at their roster and said, we've got like 4 number 2 guys. We need a number 1. And the thing that Golden possesses that the other guys don't is 2 hands. He can catch the football exceptionally well. They really had a problem with drops last year. He's also better as an intermediate route runner than he gets credit for. People see the 40 time and think, oh, he just runs down the sideline. No, he can do other things. He really seems to be building a good rapport with Jordan Love already. And I expect Golden to function as a true number 1 in this Packers offense. That doesn't mean 140 targets like some teams, but I do think there's a chance for 120 targets, which would be the most, I think, in the Matt LaFleur era, at least since Devontae Adams left. And I love him if you can get him in the double-digit rounds.
Fitz, you're our in-house Packers fan. What do you think about this pick?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about how conflicted I am with Golden. The guys in our business who do like models for rookie receivers in general, but especially the first rounders, point out that every first rounder with a profile similar to Golden, like it's just littered with guys who have been busts. I mean, 2 years ago, he was like the 3rd best receiver on the University of Houston, and that was after Tank Dell left. But the scouting guys, Daniel Jeremiah, Mel Kiper Jr., Dane Brugler, they all had Golden as a top 15 overall prospect in this draft. Like they loved him. And what he did down the stretch against some really quality competition was so impressive for Texas. So I don't know what to think here, but I'm encouraged by the fact that Matt LaFleur is one of the best play callers in the NFL. And if he and Brian Gutekunst, the Packers GM, were on the same page about drafting this guy, that LaFleur has a plan for him and is going to get him involved and get him the ball. So yeah, mixed feelings for sure.
Let's go with the older guy here now, Fitz. Who's your pick for round 12?
Austin Ekeler. I was never really that big an Ekeler guy when he was a first rounder, and I missed out on some good years. But now that he's so cheap, he plays in an exciting up and coming offense with an electric quarterback and a much improved offensive line. And Ekeler was productive when he was healthy last year. He scored double-digit PPR points in 8 of his 12 games. And I think there's some upside here, too, When Brian Robinson Jr. missed a pair of midseason games last year with a hamstring injury, Ekeler had 134 yards from scrimmage and 3 touchdowns in those 2 games. And one of those games was against the Steelers, who have a pretty good defense.
Heath, is this somebody that interests you as a late round target?
Oh, this is the guy that sits in my rankings as the best player available by rankings for a couple of rounds. And I just don't want to click it because it's an old running back who's sharing work. But I think that he's an incredible value, especially at this cost. And I don't really fully understand the difference in the ADP of Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Ekeler, because if you just look at the games when both of those guys were healthy last year, first off, neither one of them was great. But they were both within like a 1.5 of each other, right around 10 or 11 fantasy points per game. I think Brian Robinson Jr. is being overdrafted. Austin Ekeler is being underdrafted.
And Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, I think, could steal carries from Brian Robinson, but he's not going to steal any work from Ekeler.
Quick note for everybody on Draft Assistant. Draft Assistant helps you make the best decisions during your fantasy draft. It connects directly to your draft and provides both real-time pick suggestions and estimations on which players might get taken before your next pick. Draft Assistant fully integrates your customized cheat sheets and suggests picks based on your rankings, team build, ADP, and other factors. Dominate your draft in real time without the guesswork with Draft Assistant at fantasypros.com/assistant or on the Fantasy Football Draft Wizard app. All right, guys, 2 rounds left. We'll go quicker here because these are kind of the range of, I don't want to say like lottery tickets, but like kind of lottery tickets, guys that you'll be willing to drop if they don't pan out pretty early on in the year. Heath, who do you have in round 13?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of things to say about Jaydon Blue, so I'm glad that you said that we're going to be quick on these guys. I'll just say that if I can take a running back with receiving upside who's currently behind Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, who have both failed plenty over the last couple of years, that seems like a decent bet to make.
Are you interested at all? I know I said we go quick here, Heath, but are you interested at all in Javonte Williams just as like a guy who we don't think is like what he used to be, but there's just so much opportunity here?
Yeah. I think if he falls to that round 9, round 10 range, then sure. It's especially if it's one of those teams where I started. Now, the reason I don't end up picking him a lot is something I said at the start of the show. A lot of my favorite picks in the first few rounds are running backs. And I think Williams is the type of guy you target if you started off with 3 wide receivers, an elite tight end, and a good quarterback, and now you're trying to piece together that 0 RB team, then Javonte Williams is a good option. If you already have 3 running backs by the time you get to round 9, I'm not sure that Williams has the upside to really ever matter on your team. But yeah, I think any of the Cowboys running backs are a worthwhile click in the double-digit rounds for sure.
Fitz, we've talked a lot about Javonte. Do you have any thoughts on Blue as a pick here?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're getting pretty good pot odds on him as, in the 13th round, basically. Like, I don't know how he's going to work into that running back rotation, but there's a chance he has a pretty substantial role.
Your pick in round 13 here, Fitz, is a longtime Fantasy Pros favorite.
Yeah, Marvin Mims Jr. And I know people have heard me talk about him and how he scored 6 touchdowns over Denver's last 7 regular season games, despite 62 yards per game in those 7 games, despite playing fewer than half the offensive snaps in all of them. So he averaged 0.72 PPR fantasy points per snap in those 7 games, which is almost double the 0.38 PPR fantasy points per snap that Jamar Chase averaged last season. And I realize it was a lot of schemed up production. Like Mims got a bunch of yards on screens. Sean Payton was putting him in the backfield some of the time. And now the Broncos have RJ Harvey and Evan Engram to steal some of those short area targets. But Mims' average depth of target as a rookie was 15.1 yards. In college, his last 2 years at Oklahoma, he averaged more than 20 yards per catch in each of those 2 seasons. Like if he goes back to being a downfield receiver this year, fine. Like there's still a chance for him to produce that way. And he just turned 23. Like I think there are a lot of potential paths to value for this guy, and I like him as a late round dart throw.
Heath, is Mims somebody that interests you in this range?
I love Mims. I loved him as a prospect. I got too excited when Sean Payton took him in round 2 and then talked about how involved he was going to be. I got too excited last year when Sean Payton talked about how they had to get him on the field more, and then his snap share actually went down. And it's probably part of the reason why I've been skeptical about the things Sean Payton says about RJ Harvey, another second round pick that he keeps talking good about. So yes, I am definitely interested in drafting Mims at this point in the draft, and I will be optimistic, but I really don't think Sean Payton's going to let it happen.
You beat me to the RJ Harvey comparison, so well done on that. Let's go to round 14, and there were 3 players in this exercise that you guys both wanted to pick. One was in round 3, one was in round 4, and one was all the way down in round 14. You guys had the same guy again. Heath, who did you take and snake away from Fitz?
I don't know how so many people hate DeAndre Swift and think that Ben Johnson hates DeAndre Swift, and yet nobody wants to draft Roschon Johnson until round 14. It doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, he should be in that Jamal Williams / David Montgomery role. He was already basically the goal line back last year. If this offense takes the leap that we're hoping it does with Ben Johnson and hopefully Caleb Williams turning into the guy he was drafted to be, then this could be a team that scores 45 touchdowns in a season, and Roschon could definitely get to double-digit touchdowns. I don't know that he does much in the passing game. I don't expect him to be that efficient as a rusher, but he doesn't necessarily have to be. If it's blocked well and he gets the short yardage opportunities, he's a value here.
Fitz, you wanted Roschon. Where did you go instead?
I went with Isaiah Likely just to pander to you, the Ravens fan, Worm. Yeah, I mean, it's just if Mark Andrews stays healthy all year, Isaiah Likely is probably someone, I don't know, you're cutting fairly early in the season. You're just needing an extra spot, and you can't draft him as your top tight end. But if anything were to happen to Mark Andrews, Worm, we've talked about this in games Andrews has missed, Likely has produced at a rate that I think, like if you prorate it over a full season, works out to almost 900 yards and like 11 touchdowns. And I just think the guy's really good. And I'm willing to kind of throw a dart and hope that the opportunity presents itself. We've heard talk that they're looking to lock up Likely with a long-term contract, which maybe bodes well for him getting used a little bit more aggressively this year. So, yeah, I think he's worth a shot this late.
The rumor around Baltimore is that they've made him the same contract offer that they extended Andrews to a few years ago, kind of that 4-year, I think it's like $52 million, like as an offer, which obviously hasn't been accepted yet, but they are looking to extend him from what I can tell. It is likely, Heath, somebody that if you do end up waiting late on tight end or as like a second tight end that interests you?
Yeah, I think when you get to round 15 of a draft or round 14 of a draft, what you'd like to do is draft people that you know are good at football. If they get the opportunity, they're going to smash. And I think Likely is exactly that. The hard part last year was that week 1 was so good, you couldn't drop him. You just had to hold him on your bench all year long and wait just in case. And that's kind of a pain when you've got short benches in a redraft league. But the potential is so good, the offense is so good that it's worth having him on at the end of your bench for as long as you can handle that.
Heath, before we get out of here, you mentioned already the St. Jude Draftathon. Just such a cool thing that you guys do. Do you want to take a moment to let everybody know in case some people listening don't know what that is?
Yeah. Basically, from now until the end of August, we are raising money for St. Jude. Last year, we raised over $100,000. We're going to smash that number this year. We'll have all types of opportunities for people to get involved, including play in leagues with us, do mock drafts with us, have your question read on the air, all kind. And then there'll be other things throughout the year. You'll get to watch Dan Schneider beat Adam Azer at tennis again. It's one of the best thing I feel like that we get to do in this industry is stuff like the Scott Fish Bowl, like the St. Jude Draftathon, anything we can do to use this game that we love to help other people.
Yeah, it's super, super awesome. So, on the off chance anybody listening wasn't aware of that, definitely check that out throughout the next several weeks that they got going on with CBS Sports. Thank you again so much, Heath, for making the time here. Good luck throughout draft season the next several weeks. Enjoy the chaos that is incoming for all of us here in the next month and a half. For Heath and Fitz, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see everybody again next time.